Okay, now we're jumping to section 40. This starts on page 228. It's the basic state of mind of anxiety as a distinctive way in which Dasein is disclosed. And I'm going to jump to page 229. I'm going to start off by reading for you from an existential point of view. So that's the second paragraph right around section 185. From an existential point of view, the authenticity of being oneself has, of course, been closed off and thrust aside in falling. That should make sense now, right? That is, the authenticity of being oneself has, of course, been closed off. You can't do it. And it has been thrust aside in falling. Falling that is tempting, tranquilizing, and alienating because we live our lives in idle talk, curiosity, and ambiguity. Enough said. But to be thus closed off, says Heidegger, but, this is nice, but remember, what falling does is prevent us from becoming master of our moods, or our Befindlichkeit. Choosing our Befindlichkeit becomes authenticity in some essential ways. So, but, says Heidegger, to be thus closed off is merely the privation of a disclosedness. That is, we are not allowed to disclose. Now, what is disclosing? That means to uncover, right? So all this falling does is prevent us from uncovering. That's all. Look, it's not so hard that you have to make a huge, well, it is hard, but it's about uncovering, just taking the covers off, right? Flipping the light on, right? So it is merely the privation of a disclosedness. It's just preventing us from uncovering, which manifests itself phenomenally in the fact that Dasein's fleeing is a fleeing in the face of itself. All this falling is us trying not to face ourselves. Just don't want to deal with ourselves. We don't want to look ourselves in the face. We want to flee in our own faces. In the face of our own face, we flee. That in the face of which Dasein flees is precisely what Dasein comes up behind. What you run away from is still what you're coming up on, like a big circle, right? Only to the extent that Dasein has been brought before itself in an ontologically essentially manner through whatever disclosedness belongs to it, can it flee in the face of that in the face of which it flees. That's beautiful Heidegger talk. Only to the extent, I'm just going to read this again, we're right at 185, only to the extent that Dasein has been brought before itself in an ontologically essential manner. Okay, only because we've gotten a glimpse of our real selves. Only because we have uncovered ourselves, right? Only because of that, through whatever disclosedness belongs to it, however we've done that, right? Only because we have seen ourselves, even just for a moment. Only because we've seen ourselves can we flee from ourselves. And what are we fleeing from? Well, whatever it is we're running from, that's us, right? So my running from me is different than your running from you. So Heidegger can't say we all run from the same face. I run from mine. You run from yours, right? So only to the extent that Dasein has been brought before itself in an ontologically essential manner. Remember what ontology means. The study of being. Essential, fundamentally, we are wondering, what am I? Right? That's what Dasein does ontically. And it's ontological in its question of what it is and what is isness. So it's only when you confront the big question. Another philosopher named Schopenhauer said, there's only really one question. It's only one fundamental question about which every great thinker finally starts to think about, and that is the question of being. Why is there anything? Why is there something rather than nothing? Why is there being? And only when you're willing to face that question do you see that you are that thing which can ask what is being. And when you see that in an essential manner, however you get around to doing that, in whatever disclosedness belongs to it, only then can it flee in the face of that in the face of which it flees. Only then can it flee in the face of that face that it flees. What face is that? Yours. You flee in your own face. Turn away, right? So look on page 230. Dasein's falling into the they, and the world of its concern is what we have called a fleeing in the face of itself. What is it that we're fleeing into? We're fleeing into the world, into they. We fall into them to run away from ourselves, our own face. What does that mean? Look at the bottom of, still on 230. Fleeing that is so grounded is still less a character of this turning away when what this turning away does is precisely to turn thither, towards entities within the world by absorbing itself in them. We turn away from ourselves and allow ourselves, we absorb our being into them. The turning away of falling is grounded in anxiety, which in turn is what makes fear possible. So the more, we talked about this Befindlichkeit, which is fear. We're afraid of that we're, going to be found out as imposters. We're afraid that we're not as smart as we thought we were. We're afraid that things aren't going to work out. We're afraid we're going to get hurt. We're afraid we're going to get dumped. We're afraid we're not going to get an A. We're afraid we're not going to understand things. We're afraid somebody's going to leave us, that somebody's going to hurt us, that we're not going to be good enough or strong enough or quick enough or capable enough. We fear, fear, fear. But where does fear come from? It comes from anxiety. And where does anxiety come from? Anxiety is that fundamental Befindlichkeit of fleeing in the face of ourselves. To understand, last paragraph on page 230, to understand this talk about Dasein's fleeing in the face of itself and following, we must recall that being in the world is a basic state of Dasein. That's what we are, being in the world. Remember, it was all one, being in the world, all hyphenated, right? That in the face of which one has anxiety is being in the world as such. All right? What is that? Well, being in the world is a product of care. It shows that what Dasein is care. And here's what we're afraid of. That nothing matters. That nothing actually matters. Except that Dasein cares. And that care, we always want it to matter something beyond us, something objective, something outside that's real that we can come to terms with, and it matters because it really does matter. And the fear is that nothing matters. The world, however, has the character, says Dasein or Heidegger on page 231. The world has the character of completely lacking significance. You can find that sentence. It's on page 231. The world has the character of completely lacking significance, and anxiety is when you face that. When you face that nothing matters. Feel anxious. Accordingly, when something threatening brings itself close, anxiety does not see any definite here or yonder from which it comes. That in the face of which one has anxiety is characterized by the fact that what threatens is nowhere. Anxiety does not know what that in the face of which it is anxious is. Nowhere, however, does not signify nothing. Nowhere is everywhere. When you come face to face with anxiety and nothing matters, you don't know where this is coming from. You don't know why you feel this way. You just have this sinking feeling that nothing matters. It's all not going to matter. Whatever, just doesn't matter. And it's not a resignation to it. You're not, when you realize, and when you have this Befindlichkeit, this mood that just, nothing matters, it's this deep existential crisis called anxiety. Nothing matters. Now, for Heidegger, this is a good step, right? This is when everything is broken down. The world of the they ceases to matter. And for once, you are now delivered over to the world as such. The world is what it is. It's become conspicuous. It was hidden by all the they stuff, all that idle talk, all that curiosity, all that ambiguity. It was hiding, it was hiding, it was hiding it. What was it hiding? It was hiding nothing. And the moment that you feel this deep anxiety that maybe all of that crap doesn't matter, nothing matters, what you're finally coming to see is the character of the world. The world is nothing matters. Except that Dasein is care. That's it. And when you feel like nothing matters, that anxiety for Heidegger, this is a good step. This is a step in the right direction because you're seeing now what the world is. And you're going to flee from that, right? Your immediate reaction is, no, things have to matter. And so you run back to them. And you find some solace in their ideas and their idle talk and their curiosity and their ambiguity. When you feel the world bubbling up as anxiety and you're wondering why everything has stopped mattering, you turn to your Insta Face a Snapchat. Whew. Things matter again and we get distracted, right? But anxiety is when we're actually moving finally in a right direction, because only when you see the world for what it is, as nothing but care. That's it. Then you can start to build what matters from your own, not from their perspective. So just reading on 231, in the face of which one has anxiety, the it is nothing and nowhere becomes manifest. Now that means it comes to light. The it is nothing and nowhere becomes something. You're dealing with it. It's your Befindlichkeit. It's your there. Nothing and nowhere. If someone were to come to you and say, what's the matter? You would go, nothing. It's nothing. But that's exactly it. You can't say it any better than that. It's nothing isn't a dismissal of anxiety. It's getting what anxiety is. It's the nothing and the nowhere. That's the world. The world is nothing and nowhere. It is anxiety. That is where you are face to face with care and you run from it, right? The obstinacy, if you get stuck in this nothing and nowhere, the obstinacy of the nothing and nowhere within the world means as a phenomenon, the world as such is that in the face of which one has anxiety. Now remember what obstinacy is. You can't overcome, you can't get to the next thing without dealing with this one first, right? It's obstinate. The thing you want to get to, you can't get to because you got to deal with this thing that is obstinate in front of you. So when anxiety becomes obstinate, it means you can't make anything matter until you deal with this anxiety. You got to face it instead of running from it. The nothing and the nowhere. The utter insignificance which makes itself known in the nothing and nowhere does not signify that the world is absent, but tells us that entities within the world are of so little importance in themselves that on the basis of this insignificance of what is within the world in its worldhood is all that still obtrudes itself. When anxiety becomes conspicuous, remember what these things mean. When anxiety becomes conspicuous, that means the world is broken. What world is broken? Their world is broken. And when their world is broken, it doesn't work anymore for you. It's no longer ready to hand. You feel anxiety bubbling up. But what is this anxiety? It's nothing, and it's nowhere. It's conspicuousness of the world itself. And it's obstinate. It won't go away. But you want to flee in the face of it. So you turn into falling. Idle talk, curiosity, ambiguity. You distract yourself. That's exactly what they tell you. They'll say, oh, don't worry about this. You'll get over it. Here, take a pill. Oh, here's a smartphone. Apple's coming out with a new one. Woo, woo, woo. They say blah, 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 blah. Idle talk, curiosity, ambiguity. Cover up this anxiety. Cover it up, cover it up, cover it up. The world becomes ready at hand again. We jump back into their world because we don't like this anxiety. But when it's conspicuous, the world is broken down. Their world doesn't work anymore. It's no longer ready to hand. Anxiety becomes conspicuous. It becomes obstinate if it won't go away until you deal with it. And then the only thing you've got left, nothing else can be significant except the world. It's there. It obtrudes. What oppresses us when we have these moods, what oppresses us is not this or that. You can't point to what the problem is. Nor is it the summation of everything present at hand. It's not all this crap in the world around me. It is rather the possibility of the ready to hand in general. That is to say, it's the world itself. What is finally coming up in anxiety when nothing else can have significance is the world. That's what's becoming apparent. All right. That in the face of which anxiety is anxious is nothing ready to hand within the world. It's nothing around you guys. Why are you in this mood where nothing matters? It's not because of anything going on around you. It is the nature of the world. He says on page 232, the bottom of the first paragraph, being in the world itself is that in the face of which anxiety is anxious. This is Dasein's being. Being in the world causes anxiety. That's it. It's nothing else. All right, so let's see. Anxiety makes us feel out of place, like we don't belong. Like there's no secret to why books like Harry Potter have gotten such a great following, because Harry Potter never feels at home. He's always out of place. He always just wants to be comfortable somewhere, and he can't be because he's this or he's that, or people are always pointing out at him and he's something, and everybody feels inside this sort of like, I don't belong. That's being in the world. And we flee from that feeling. We run away from it. Right? It makes us feel uncanny. It makes us feel like we're not at home. There's nothing that we can become familiar with. So we run instead into the arms of the they, where we can feel tranquilized. It's tempting to be fallen and alienating. All right, going to stop there. And the next thing I'm going to talk about is death. Wahaha.